Hello and welcome to this tutorial on Adobe Photoshop by Eduonix. In this tutorial we're going over the Actions panel. This is going to be one of probably a three-part series, but it's great stuff to know, and especially if you're doing this for a living and you want to cut out a solid hour out of every day of doing repetitive stuff. Here I've brought open the Actions panel. You can go to Window, down to Actions, or whatever the Mac equivalent is. You can hit Alt F9, as you can see, and when you bring up that window you'll notice there's a bunch of trees, meaning little collapsible menus. Each one of these is an action. As you just saw, if you double click on the name you can rename it. If you double click on the action you'll bring up the action options. This is just basically how it's displayed in the menu and what function keys assigned to it, which is very useful. So double clicking it, you can assign it a shortcut key, one of your F keys. If you holding Control or Command on a Mac and double click it, you'll get the actual action performed. Also, if you just press play down here. So before I tell you how to make actions, we're just going to go through some of these, and you'll be able to see the bits and pieces of them as they do their thing. As you saw, there was a little error when I tried to do the vignette. I held in Control, double clicked it. It gets to feather and there's an error. Now make snapshot is the first action here, and that creates a snapshot in your history. And if you double click on the snapshot you'll go back to the original part in the file. So that's the first action, and in doing that would just be the menu command to create a snapshot. If you're in your history and you right click on the state, which in this case is only 2, I'm just gonna do that. And go to new snapshot. You'll create a snapshot up here in these little layers here, which is great because you can just double click on these and go back to where you were. And I believe they're retained with the history, but you can look up how to preserve snapshots or watch. There's going to be another video on history if there wasn't already, I'm not sure. But back to the actions. The next one is feather. So I'm actually going to show you a different one. This one has some errors or something. Before I do that, let's just take a look at the actions panel. This is what we're going to be going into probably in the second video. And that's begin recording, and this is create new set. So we'll these are all sets of actions. And if you're creating them by hand like this, it's really annoying, but I don't want to steer you away from this video right away. You can just perform an action you do normally and record it, and it'll record what you did, and you can just repeat it by double clicking. So if you have to take this picture, cut it, flip it around, make it 10% smaller, and save it, which is so frequent or so common in the professional world doing this, then you can just make an action and get it done like 10 times faster. So it's you can just record yourself doing it once, make a few tweaks, and then you're done. So it's not like you have to actually go in and build these things. But let's take a look at sepia toning, because it's just color and it's based on pixels being there. And that's one thing you do have to contend with, is actions sometimes don't work or they'll stop, but they'll always give you a dialog box like you saw, or a pop-up box that says this is not available at the time, or you can't do this. So in sepia toning, as you notice, a first step, which is make a snapshot, you'll notice this is also in the presets for making an action. You have this as an option. If I hit record, Well, probably won't do it unless I actually record something, but you'll see it as an option, like always make the first action make snapshot, which is good to have. So make layer. Sorry, double click on that. You can do any one of these individual actions obviously by just double clicking them with control held down or going to play. Then it merges the two. So basically this is creating a snapshot in history so you can go back. It makes a new layer just the same as hitting this button above the one you currently have selected, I'm guessing. Yeah. So this would just be you recording yourself hitting new. It merges visible, which is all layers go into one. Once again, this is just another command. I believe it's a command over here. Yep, Shift Control E. Then it desaturates. And I'm wondering how it does this. I guess if you just double click on one of these, you don't get to edit it. If it doesn't have a caret or a thing next to it, then it'll just do it. But desaturate's probably a color command. Yeah, Shift Control U. So these are all commands that you may not even know existed. Anything you can do currently, you can record pretty much. There's a few things where you have to go in there with some custom code, and we'll just touch on that. We won't really get into it, and that'll be in the third video. Then we have make, which is a combination of all these different things. This is kind of like a custom action. You make the action make, and it's composed of these tiny little bits, which some are parameters, some are kind of little mini actions. If I hold in control and hit make, it creates a new adjustment layer with all this stuff, I'm assuming. So in the end, let's play the entire action. So what just happened is something that would normally I would have to, with my layer, create a new layer, maybe copy this one, paste it here, go up, and I'm doing this pretty fast too. It did just desaturate it, so then I'm doing all this stuff and I'm thinking a lot, and I don't have to think, I can just double click it. At the same time, I could have been recording what I was doing if I didn't have this. I could have been recording what I was doing, and that would have been the last time I would have had to have done it if I'm a very organized person. So let's take a look at one more action. I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and keep the sepia tone on there. I'll do this one just because it's so long. Control double click. You see how fast it goes through everything. For doing these things, which are all menu commands and sprawling all over the place, and doesn't look very good, but we can go back through all the steps. It's interesting, to say the least. Perhaps you need to alter some settings on this, or make it for a smaller picture or a bigger picture. One of the two. And it could have been tripped up too. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. I'm going to delete all these adjustment layers in that new layer. So now we just have a black and white layer. If I click on this molten lead again, then we get about the same thing. So some of these aren't intended for like the picture that you have. Some of them require first steps to be done. Probably won't be able to see anything on on cast shadow because actually so cast shadow is doing all these things that you'd have to create with settings and everything in order to get a cast shadow. And I'm just going to cancel it because it's taking a long time. This is a pretty big image. This transformation command. These are all things that you could go into, and it's recording every little bit of what you're doing. So in the end, actions are really useful. So make sure you watch the second and the third video, because we're going to start recording our own actions, and that's the meat of this particular function of Photoshop. But real quick, before I leave you, I'm just going to go through these panel options up here. So we have button mode, which is really cool. It'll let me into it now for some reason. Oh, I'm in transform mode right now. Okay. Button mode obviously turns everything into buttons. It's pretty cool. As you can see, it's doing quadrant color just then. Definitely something that would take you a while just to do it, and it's non-destructive in the sense that it creates a new layer every time. So that's button mode. It's pretty cool. You can just click on what you want. We have new action, new set, duplicate, delete, play. I wouldn't worry about the menu up here for these things or even for these things. However, all these inserts allow you to manually insert things, like stops and conditionals, which is more advanced. We'll touch on that a little bit. Then you have action options. If I'm not in button mode, I can just highlight an action, and I go up here to action options, and it's going to give me the same thing if I were just double click on it. And that's double clicking where there isn't words. If you ever double click where there is words, you're going to rename something, obviously. So we have playback options, which is important depending on what your action is. If it involves some things that involve user input, custom stuff, then you'll do this. If there's a lot of quick actions in a lot of adjustments, and you're supposed to stop it when you like how it is, and I want you to keep your mind open to do actions like that. Let's say I do 10% opacity reduction over and over and over and over, and that's my action, and I have a pause of 1 second after the third time it's repeated. It'll pause every second, so you have time to stop and say, okay, that's good. And still you're doing it way faster than you could. So that's what pauses are good for that. And they're also good when it's an important thing. Other than that, accelerated is pretty much the way to go. As you know, that just makes it shoot through the action really fast. Allow tool recording. Looking up at the rest of these, there's clear all actions, obviously. That clears all the actions. Reset actions, reset settings and stuff. Load actions, just like load anything else, like load brushes. You can just load a bunch of pre-saved actions. Same with replace and save. You can't really save these, but you can save the ones you make, obviously. And then up here you have, or down here, I should say, you have. We're not going to go into close and close tab group. It's all that does is just close the panel. But you can see all the individual actions. Like if you have to construct your own, it can be a good idea just to look at like all these individual actions and what they're composed of. These are also things that can be done individually. I rotated a canvas and it looks like it rotates the current layer. What you would expect. If it does anything, like if it needs a selection, it'll have selection in parentheses. So these are all just the little individual commands grouped together by these tags or whatever you want to call them. So these are all like trails. Probably one of the coolest things though, and I'm getting into it last, I'll probably hit on it in the beginning too, so I want to really drive this one home. And it's an insert, and really all the inserts are great, um, but it's insert path particularly. And I'm not really sure, I think I might just have to have the brush open. I'm not sure exactly how to do it right here. If you notice though, I'm using the brush and it's remembering my brush strokes. So if I wanted to draw a flower or something, or put petals on something, or put some cross hatching, I could just do it, and I'm using a mouse, so forgive me. I could just do it and I could repeat that at any point. And of course I have to stop the recording. But we're going to get more into recording later. We're going to get into all these inserts, particularly using a brush, insert path. In the next video, so make sure you watch them. Actions are pretty much a great way to do anything. I don't have any real examples now, but like I said, let's say you're resizing a bunch of images. You don't have a bulk resizer, you need to do something that you've only found can be done with Photoshop, which is really common. You would use actions. I've used them before to create 1,000+ picture jobs, where the client was always really happy because they got it done really fast, and I didn't have to spend a lot of my own time on it. So make sure you watch all these videos and get to know them. Until that, just practice.